Time at Belmont as a senior, receiving a Bachelor of Arts in Audio Engineering with minors in Voice Performance and Music Business. Grace has spent the last 3 years as a dedicated member of Kappa Alpha Theta, a Towering Traditions leader, and just wrapped up her time serving on the 2022 Orientation Council. Though much of her schooling has been focused on the music industry, she holds a deep love for creative writing, reading, and a propensity towards chasing the tangled lines of her curiosities. These things have led her to spend much of her extra time at Belmont analyzing the natural connection human beings have to the arts and self-expression, and specifically how that relates to building relationships and community with one another. During her freshman year, she was awarded the Williams Murray First Year Writing Award for her research essay on mindfulness and ornithology, and is excited to now be guest speaking today on the topic of navigating nostalgia. Grace is presenting with Dr. Joel Overall. Dr. Overall received his PhD from Texas Christian University. His research areas are in sonic rhetoric and new media composition and Kenneth Burke and music. And he's published in Rhetoric Review and Rhetoric Society Quarterly, and his work appears also in several anthologies.
This last semester when I was in Dr. Overall's third year writing class, so I'm excited to have put it in a form that all of you can now enjoy together. So we're going to be talking about navigating nostalgia, of course, and I would love to start with this quote by William Faulkner, which is often considered when talking about nostalgia, and that is, "The past is never dead, it is not even past." And I think that that is an excellent representation of the way that we navigate life with our old selves and the one who we are now. We are just as much our 13-year-old selves, our 16-year-old selves, as we are who we are in this moment. And to deny ourselves that ability to recognize that relationship is to deny us of all of the experiences that we've had that led us to this moment. So, of course, we're now college students, many of us, and with that comes a lot of navigating nostalgia. A lot of us bring photos and memories from home. Here are some of the ones that I was able to find. In the top, you can see me and my sister behind the wheel of the car, which I actually ended up taking out of park, and it started rolling down the driveway, and my dad had to jump in and stop it before anything bad happened, which luckily he did. Thank you, Kevin. Next, we have my childhood dog, Murphy. He was a big old shepherd and just one of the loveliest animals you've ever met. And losing him was a really difficult part of my childhood, even though I really didn't have any idea what was going on. I was too young. I also have my sister and I going somewhere, I'm not sure where, but us and my mom are wearing matching outfits, which is super cute. Love the denim, that's good luck. And then of course me and my mom and my sister all sitting together. But coming to college allowed me to have this intense resurfacing of these memories and emotions that I had never experienced before, because I'd never left home, I'd never had to realize that those things would not be at my fingertips. And this is not uncommon. According to Christine Baccio in her research about the psychological perspective of nostalgia, the most typical age pattern indicated increasing nostalgia to a peak during the college years, which I'm sure all of us can agree with. Nostalgia can sometimes be comforting. It's a reminder of how much care one has for what they are longing for. And I smile when I recall memories of summer road trips with my best friends or the feeling of my first ever day of school. Bringing these reminders to college for comfort were a reminder of home, and honestly made me feel a lot more secure in my place here as I was trying to figure out what was going on. You know, I moved 2 seats away. I'm a first-generation college student. I had no idea what I was getting into. So to be reminded of the people who cared about me, even if they were far away, was a really nice reminder. And yet, even as I reminisced on those good things, if I reminisced too much on these memories, I began to ruminate and over-romanticize them. I was often left feeling physically ill from the deep longing for what I couldn't have or could no longer return to. And sometimes this can include looking at photos of old places that we can't return to, like maybe a childhood home, or voicemails from 3 or 4 years ago, holding to those remnants of people that we have loved and lost. Music especially can be the most intense instigator of such physical ailment. And if you see these photos, my best friend actually painted over these. If you are familiar with Phoebe Bridgers, who we'll be talking about a little bit in this presentation, her first album, Stranger in the Alps, included this figment of a ghost over an image of her childhood self. And I think that that's an awesome representation of the ways that we navigate young adulthood and eventually adulthood. And so as I said, music can be a huge instigator of this. I personally have dozens of playlists relating to feelings of loss, reminiscence, times and places and memories that I want to be immersed in again. And I'm sure many of us relate to that as well. Because that's the thing, isn't it? Nostalgia is more than memory recall. It is a fervent, visceral, physical reaction to remembering. One of my favorite and most dangerous playlists is quite literally titled Music That Physically Pains Me Like Ouch, Why Does It Make Me Feel Like That? Containing over 60 songs that will send me into a sentimental spiral. And if you look closely, I hope that you find a few on there that maybe make you feel something as well. Fix You by Coldplay, always a classic. Lots of Phoebe Bridgers. Liability by Lorde, enough said there. But according to Baccio, yet again, this connection to music is likely only to get worse. She says that nostalgia for music showed an opposite pattern, with gradually increasing nostalgia from a low in childhood to a peak in later years. Within the last 2 decades, tech advancements have made it so that memories and communication are quite literally in the palm of our hands. Distance is no longer an issue, but things from the past are also within easy access. Storage apps such as Google Photos, Amazon Photos, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook all have ways that you can look back at what you did a year, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years ago, when maybe sometimes we don't really want to be reminded of that. And so I ask, can this type of access to our memories be unfulfilling, unproductive, and even dangerous? When the pandemic hit, we grew obsessed with, quote, the good old days on social media, recalling the times of normal life. And if you spent any amount of time on TikTok, I'm sure you can recount a few trends that went around of people putting memories of pre-COVID life into some really sad, nostalgic song. And the comments would be filled with, "Why are you doing this to me? This is painful, torment." But yet they were getting millions of views and they were getting saved, and all of us were there too, thinking about it. And so of course I had to jump on the train as well. And it's funny that I'm even presenting on this now, because as of late, the Phoebe Bridgers Scott Street trend has been on TikTok. And again, if you don't know about that song, it's basically the line, "She repeats is, don't be a stranger," and people are putting the song over videos of their childhood selves. So I had to get on the train, and I will show a video that I made. I found some old footage of me and my sister when it first snowed in 2006 at our home in Austin, Texas, which is very unreal. And it's a little sad, it's a little nostalgic. So here's an example of that. So perfect timing for that trend to be making its way around. But even though that was a representation of my childhood, even with COVID, it was torture to see all of this. At the time, we had no idea when we would be getting back into normal life, or really if we ever would again. So this process was agonizing, and yet we couldn't get enough. Even I found myself entranced by that, hence this video. But now, in the normal, we're romanticizing life as it was then, when we had a seemingly, quote, perfect utopia of no work, no commitments, no school, no stress, when that obviously was simply not the case. For many of us, being home, if we were there during that time, was a really difficult period of navigating our youth with our adulthood, our independence, returning back to these memories that maybe were really uncomfortable for us to be a part of. And so this endless cycle is only propelled by technological advancement, as it has led us to the height of technology dependence, and we are only starting to experience the surface level consequences of such a coping mechanism. In his book, Emotional Intelligence, Dr. Daniel Goleman identifies and defines this phrase as the ability to identify one's feelings and the feelings of others. He notes people with higher degrees of emotional intelligence have healthier relationships, adapt better to their new environments, and are more skilled at working towards their goals. I think 3 things that we would really all love to possess. But with the height of technology dependence, there are 5 major negative consequences that take away from evolving one's emotional intelligence. We have undermined self-awareness, weakened self-regulation, diminished social skills, undermined empathy, and stunted motivation. Nostalgia, for lack of a better term and for the sake of simplicity, is a big feeling. Several parts of the brain are activated depending on the memory or emotions recalled. Nostalgic experiences stimulate metabolic activity and blood flow in several regions of the brain, particularly the frontal, limbic, and paralimbic and midbrain areas. People who listen to music that evokes nostalgia experience greater activity than they do when listening to music that does not invoke nostalgia. Our brain is extremely active in these times when we're reminiscing. But if younger people are growing up less emotionally intelligent, handling a big feeling like nostalgia can easily become a dangerous coping mechanism. The word nostalgia actually stems from the Greek nostos, meaning returning or homecoming, paired with algos, which is pain. William Faulkner again put it best when he said, "How often I have lain beneath rain on a strange roof thinking of home." It isn't a coincidence either that when considering nostalgia, we often find ourselves thinking of childhood. The brain conceptualizes and encodes early memories, solidifying them in long-term memory storage in the cerebral cortex. Meanwhile, short-term memories are much more fragile and malleable, residing in the hippocampus. This is why people with Alzheimer's often revert back to their first languages. Famously, an example of this is Albert Einstein, who spoke his last words in German, not English, and so no one knows what he said because his bedside nurse only spoke English. And in addition, why they might have just detailed memories of their hometowns, but not be able to tell you what they ate for breakfast that morning. The intention of nostalgia is the search for a return to safety, thus pushing us to romanticize the past, to reflect on fond memories. And the issue with this is that every time you remember an event from the past, your brain networks change in ways that can alter the later recall of the event. Thus, the next time you remember it, you might not recall the original event, but what you remembered the previous time. Memory is not simply an image produced by time traveling back to the original event. It can be an image that is somewhat distorted because of the prior times you remembered it. Your memory of an event can grow less and less precise to the point of being totally false with each retrieval. This is research from Marla Paul. But it all depends on where it is stored in the brain and where it's processed, which is something that we don't necessarily have control over. So remember when I said that nostalgia was a big feeling? That might have been a little bit of an understatement. And I love this quote by Andreas Huyssen because nostalgia can be utopia in reverse. I love the emphasis on can because it depends on the ways that we are able to navigate it ourselves once we learn how to. And utopia, a perfect society in reverse, the opposite of it. Nostalgia is a huge way for us to navigate our past experiences and who we want to become, but only if we have the ability to learn and navigate it ourselves. And so nostalgia is a complex emotion involving past-oriented cognition and mixed affection signature, which is the same vein as episodic depression, rage, and sensory overload. But even further, nostalgia can be triggered by all 5 senses, oftentimes more than one at a time. I would go so far as to say nostalgia is like magic or a superpower. If our intentions are for good, then the benefits can certainly be reaped, but like with anything, with great power comes great responsibility. And so it is our responsibility in care and protection of ourselves to practice mindfulness when navigating nostalgia so as not to get addicted to the first false comfort and safety it can provide. If you've never seen it, I think the movie About Time can be a perfect antidote for our journey as we are navigating nostalgia. The main character, Tim, can travel in time. That's the point of the movie. And he says at one point, "The truth is now I don't travel back in time at all, not even for the day. I just try to live every day as if I've deliberately come back to this one day to enjoy it as if it was the full final day of my extraordinary, ordinary life." And that's really sweet and endearing. It's a movie. We're talking about media and our relationship with it as well. But we can't just turn off nostalgia like Tim can decide not to time travel. And honestly, why would we want to? It can be fun and it can be freeing and the sentiment of it can be good. So I think John Green actually put it best when discussing his relationship to the song New Partner by Palace Music. Remember the whole nostalgia with music thing and the intensity of that? Well, here we go. And it's a song that he writes has been with him through the most blissful and difficult experiences of his life. He says, "For Sarah, his wife, and me, the song now sounds like being in love all those years ago when we were each other's new partners. And it also sounds like our love now. It's a bridge between that life and this one. We're playing New Partner for our now 9-year-old son for the first time, and Sarah and I can't help but smile a little giddily at each other. We start dancing together, slowly in the kitchen, despite our son's gagging noises, and we sing along, Sarah on key and me way off. At the end of the song, I ask my son if he liked it, and he says, a little. That's okay. He'll have a different song. You probably have a different one too. I hope it carries you to the places you need to visit without asking you to stay in them. That is what nostalgia should do. Carry you to the places you need to visit without asking you to stay in them, and without you asking to stay either. Like with any real-world adventure you go on, it's important to remember to pack your keys so you can get back inside when you return home. The same is true for the mind, where our keys are emotional balance, an adequate understanding of our coping tendencies, and the emotional boundaries we set thereafter are like our maps we use to navigate our journeys through the past. Wherever you choose to go from here, I hope above all it reminds you of the gift of having something to miss in the first place. Safe travels, and thank you for listening.